Hey everyone, in this video, I want to get a little technical, and I'm going to show you something that I've been working on. Basically, we have a bunch of machines that we need to provide DNS names for, um, and the currently available DNS services are just kind of frustrating to use. Realistically, DNS hasn't changed since the early days of the internet. Yes, there are things like DNSSEC that have been added at this point. I think that was like 2 decades ago. Um, but realistically, DNS is pretty much the same. And a lot of the services that you use to manage DNS, you're either like in the Microsoft realm, where the licensing for Active Directory, which provides a DNS service, um, is super expensive, or you're in one of the publicly available clouds, which has its own pricing, AWS, Amazon, oh, sorry, AWS, Azure, GCP, those sorts of things. Um, or you're going through a registrar like GoDaddy. And most of those registrars, they are basically trying to upsell you on the other services that they provide. Now, in our case, we don't need any of those services. We're handling all of that on our own, and we really don't want to be uh, kind of hamstrung having to go through all of these ads, is basically what they are, just to manage our DNS. It'd be really awesome if we could just manage it like it was a database, like it was an API, something super simple. So that's what we set out to build. Um, and that's what I want to show you in this video today. Now, if you have any questions about this, you can find us. We meet every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time in what's called the Cortex users group. But in addition to talking about Cortex, we also talk about some of the other stuff that we're doing. You can find a link down below to get an invite to that. And we also have a Discord channel or a server, Discord server, where you can talk about all the stuff that we've been working on. Again, links down in the video description. There will also be a link down in the description to this particular project. This project is currently source available. It's not truly open source yet, but the plan is to make it a truly open source project that enables contributions and that sort of thing. But at least for right now, uh, the source is available primarily to make it easy to distribute and to kind of show people what we're doing and what we're thinking about. So let's go and check it out. So over here, here is our GitLab uh, instance with the code on it. And you can see the README. Right now it's called names because naming is hard. That might change at some point in the future, but right now it's just called names. There's some installation instructions here, which the basic process is to go over to, let's see, I think it's build. Sorry, my computer's running a little slow. And then go to artifacts. And then you can browse for the latest artifact. And you can see a version for Linux, a version for Mac OS, and a version for Windows. Um, I'm running on a Mac, so this demo will be on my Mac. Um, but in production, we're actually running it on Linux. There is a Windows binary. If you want to run it on Windows, that's fine too. It should work exactly the way it's described. It is written in C sharp, so it's cross-platform. In the future, when we actually have true releases, there will be releases listed under here. And when this loads, it'll actually show you that there are no releases. Yeah, there are no releases, right? So let's see how to actually use this thing. So you, if you're familiar with DNS, you might be familiar with something like the dig command. Let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So we have the dig command, and we can say, at localhost, and you can see I've done this a few times. So we'll just do that. So let's look for a specific host, and we see in a second. This is the first time I spun it up, so it's a little bit slow. Uh, it comes back with an answer and gives me an IP address, right? And my computer is running extremely slowly because it's recording the video. So normally it responds much quicker than that. Um, let's look for something that maybe doesn't exist. So like google.com, obviously my local server, ah, actually I have it configured in recursive mode. So if it doesn't know the answer, it goes out and tries to find the answer for me. Um, I could potentially turn that off, and then it would only respond with things that existed. Um, obviously, the example that I gave here, that's custom to me. That's, brianparks.me, that's my domain. Let's uh, do a DNS query for something that doesn't exist, like dig, and we'll continue to do at localhost because this is uh, names running on my local machine. We'll say a, then we'll just be very explicit about this, does not exist, dot brianparks dot me. The period at the end is not strictly necessary. Um, and you can see that uh, it doesn't have an answer. That name doesn't exist. And in fact, you can see from the authority section that it actually names said, well, this doesn't exist in my local database. Let me go out and try to find an answer for it. And the only thing that it could find was that the brianparks.me domain has a start of authority, SOA record, of, in this case, ns57.domaincontrol.com, which I think that's a GoDaddy um, address. So let's make this actually exist. So let's close the code. You can see that on GitLab. Said close the code. There we go. Okay, so here is the database. And right now it's super simple. It is just a table of resource records. In the future, we'll get in things a little more complicated with zones and maybe users and some other things like that to support like API access. But right now, it's basically just a DNS server on top of a Postgres database. It only supports Postgres at the moment. Um, just for simplicity, but let's go ahead and add a new record. The ID is a GUID, so let's go get ourselves a GUID. So we on a Mac, I can do UUID gen, and there we go. I have a GUID or a UUID, as the non-Microsoft world calls it. And I'm going to try to paste it in here. There we go. Paste that in there. We'll say the zone is parts.me. This does have to have the dot at the end indicating the root zone. This has to be a fully qualified zone, including the dot at the very end. Um, we can go into that in other videos or discussions if we want to. This is going to be an A record. The name is, what did I say, does not exist. The irony is that I'm making it exist, so now it does exist. It is no longer does not exist. Um, the value, in this case, it's an A record, so the value should be an IP address. If this were a C name, uh, then the value would just be the canonical name, the DNS name. And in that case, the C name would have to, if it's an absolute C name, it has to end with a dot. If it's a relative name, another host in this zone, for instance, it would not end with a dot. That's consistent with pretty much any other DNS service out there. So let's just give this an IP address. It really doesn't matter what IP address. The time to live is the TTL of the record. So we'll just say, what is that? That's an hour. This is in seconds, so I think that's an hour. Um, the only other requirement for this record is the created date. So let's say, yeah, today at this time, right? Now, there are other types of records in DNS that require additional parameters. And in a lot of places, uh, there's just one text box where you put in the value. AWS, for instance, is this way. Route 53, it's basically just put in the value for the record. In this database, I wanted to split that out into separate pieces um, to potentially make it a little bit easier for the future. So here we have, for MX records, we have MX preference, which is the number at the beginning of the host name. And then if you're using an SRV record, they have ports, priorities, and weights. Weight is similar to preference, but rather than just having preference and having it be used for two similar concepts that are actually named different things in the different record types, I went with two separate columns. So for an MX record, you would have an MX preference, and for an SRV record, you would have an SRV weight. So let's save that. And what am I missing? Do I have to have, I think I might have to have values here. Even though I'm not using these fields, uh, I went with non-nullable fields just to preserve non-nullability of some of the other things. It made the coding a little bit easier. Um, so there we go. Now we can save it. So obviously none of these fields are required for the A record. Um, they're not, or sorry, I should say they're not used for the A record, but they are required to be filled in just for the database. All right, now let's go back to our terminal here, and we'll just do that again. And now we have a record, does not exist, resolves to 127.0.0.1. So that was probably a long demo for what amounted to dropping a record in a database and then being able to look it up from a DNS server. But I think that makes the administration of my DNS much simpler. I have all of my records just in a Postgres database, and I can treat them as a database. I don't have to worry about zone files. I don't have to worry about logging into GoDaddy, dealing with their API or their UI or anything like that. This is super simple, super straightforward. Obviously, you have to make sure that you're properly protecting the database. You know, that doesn't go away. You are on the hook for maintaining the security of the infrastructure. Um, but that's really no different from maintaining the security of the other infrastructure that the DNS records are pointing to, right? So, um, yeah, if you're interested in this, there's links down below to download the code, to look at the code. Again, it is not truly open source quite yet. It's just source available, but you can certainly look at the source. You can download it. You can try it out for yourself. If you run into any issues, feel free to, if you're able to file an issue on the Git repository, you can. Otherwise, send me an email, let me know, schedule time with me to talk about it. Curious to see what your thoughts are and if it works for you. Again, it's working for us. You know, we built it for us, but if you want to use it as well, um, absolutely go ahead. It is definitely available to be used, available to be tested, tried out, um, report bugs, ask for features. We have our own roadmap, but if you have something specific that you want to see in it, let us know what that is. And whatever we build, we'll have another video, you know, in a week or two with the updates. So with that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.